Hello, everyone. Welcome to Veteran Voices. And for those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. Veteran Voices is a show where I interview veterans who are serving beyond the uniform. And I'm your host, Mary Kate Soliva, Army Special Operations veteran. And I'm excited to introduce our special guest, but just a quick programming note before we get started. Veteran Voices is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming, wherever you can get your podcasts from. And we are in proud partnership with the Guam Human Rights Initiative, a nonprofit near and dear to my heart, who is aim is to advance research on human rights issues impacting Guam and Micronesia. So without further ado, I am super excited to welcome Marine Corps veteran who served over 30 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, Jim Hutchins. Jim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's like in case folks, listeners missed that part, that you served over 30 years in the Marine Corps, I know for a fact that you have many nuggets of wisdom to share. And I know we only have an hour, but I just wanted to know if you could kick us off with a motivational quote, something that Grandma Sue can listen to.
Yeah, I had to really think about that and make sure I was being, uh, I don't know, polite, if you will, because a lot of things I could say would probably not go well in the setting. So I think one that's fitting that I kind of use quite a bit throughout my career and even today is, if it was easy, we wouldn't be here. And you're just that Marine mindset of we get handed the hard missions and, Americans expect the Marines to be the ones who are doing those hard things. Or if it was easy, we wouldn't be here. And it fits in this, civilian world as well. So
Absolutely. And it's kind of the tough stuff makes it worth trying and it's so much more rewarding at the end once we've achieved it, right? And I know we were just saying just a moment ago before we got started about how I always felt that Marines are a different breed of human being. You all are definitely, especially for me with the women Marines, they're just like, intimidating. And but I really think that rings true, as you said, even in the civilian capacity. So thank you for that. So
sure.
I love on this show what a bit makes it a bit different than other programs with regards to interviewing veterans is starting where you grew up. And I think that's so important because we often travel around. We say that we always have a battle buddy that's we got a couch we can bum off of no matter where we go throughout the country, even around the world. But there's something wholesome about learning about where we came from and where it all started. So if you could share a bit about where you grew up and a bit about some anecdotes from that time.
Sure. I used to call it, or I kind of still refer to it, the hub of culture in northeastern Pennsylvania. Little town, address is Shavertown, Pennsylvania. But really, that was the closest post office to us, which was about 7, 8 miles from our house. So we were really out there in what we could call the sticks. Probably not so much the sticks today, but in Jackson Township area there, and
Mm.
like I said, in northeastern Lake Lehman High School district up that way. Um, but yeah, small town, small school. I think I graduated with 154 in my
Oh my
graduating
goodness.
class. And my daughters graduated from there a couple years ago now, several years ago now, and I think it was 156. So it hasn't really grown much, but
Wow. So it really is small town. And when you say that the post office is like 6, 7 miles down the road, that really just puts it in perspective. So,
country
uh,
miles, country miles,
oh,
country miles. So
oh,
probably
country miles.
further,
Now, is
but
this like no
yeah,
traffic lights, like one, one
no,
road,
no.
one lane each way?
Yeah,
Uh,
a couple stop signs. It's a while before you get a traffic light.
is this
So
what they call Amish country? Do you have like horse and buggy warning
no,
signs? Not
no,
that
where
far.
I'm at now is, but not up that way. So.
Great. Now, did you grow up in a pretty big family?
No, it's just my brother and I. Just, that's the only siblings I had. I had a lot of cousins, and aunts and uncles, but it was just my brother and I, with my mom and dad, and that was it.
Now, I'm imagining that in a very, like you said, the country area, that is it billboards? Did you have military influence at all when you were growing up? A dad, parent who served, grandparent?
I did. My dad was a Marine.
Oh,
And so I listened to his stories, Vietnam era guy, and always envisioned, well, I was going to be like my dad. I was gonna, be. My dad always say, "Hey, I want you to be better than I ever could be." So I was like, "All right, well then, I'm gonna join the Marine Corps, and I'm gonna instead of getting out as a corporal, I'm gonna be a sergeant or staff sergeant or a sergeant major or whatever." I'm like, okay, I'm gonna beat my dad. Like that was a challenge to me that he would lay down, and so, yeah, a lot of influence from him, and just wanted to learn more about, hey, well, what did he do during his time? And as I got older, I realized, I was like, wow, he was in the Marine Corps in a tough time, and he probably saw a lot of stuff that he didn't want to talk about, and to this day doesn't, right? And so it was just one of those things that I really took to when I was young. And I had a cousin who my uncle was in the army, and so we would always go back and forth. And I know you're an army veteran and or are still serving, sorry. And so him and I would go back and forth a lot on, well, the Marine Corps is better, and Army's better. And so we were kids. That was like, we're going to do it the Marine Corps way, and he's like, no, we're going to do it the Army way. So it was a lot of fun. So that was the influence that was primarily from my dad.
no, that's great. And I asked that question because I have had guests on the show that have had no military influence, and I just wonder, especially when you're living out in the country, if there was some like magical billboard. I just try to give, credit to recruiters where it's due, if there's any out there. And was there even a recruiting station in your town, or did you have to go across state to find a
No,
recruiter?
the closest one was in Wilkes-Barre, Wilkes-Barre, or however you want to pronounce it. I've been out of the valley for a while, but that was the closest recruiting station. That was where my recruiters are at, which is over the other side of the mountain in the valley area of Wilkes-Barre. And so I was, like I said, the country guy on the other side of the mountain. So
This is
uh,
becoming a Lord of the Rings journey right now.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
the
yeah,
the
pretty
hero's
much.
journey over the other side of the mountain
Yeah,
to get to the recruiting station?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness. Oh, I mean, and I guess with your dad's influence as well, was he considering, because I'm trying to do my math here about that you served over 30 years. So I'm trying to think about where our country was at when you were joining, and what the state of the world was at that time. How'd your parents feel about you joining?
Well, it's kind of funny that you asked that because my brother, who's 3 years older than me, he was in the Navy at the time, and the Persian Gulf War in the early '90s broke out, and I was still a junior in high school when that started. And so I remember watching the TV and seeing what was going on, and my brother was already over in the area there on the USS Guam floating around, and I looked at my dad and I'm like, all right, I got to go join the Marine Corps because, I'm not going to join the Navy, but I know Marines are on my brother's ship and I'm going to be on that ship with my brother and we're going to go in there and do it together. And so, you're still kind of clueless because I was a junior in high school, I'm going to remind you. And so it was funny because a couple of days later, I went straight down to the recruiting station and I said, hey, I want to join the Marine Corps and I want to go serve on the USS Guam with my brother. And I don't care how you do it, just figure it out. And they were all excited, like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And it like skipped a whole bunch of questioning and went straight to, trying to get into the ready to sign the contract. And then they're like, "Oh, well, so when did you graduate high school?" And I said, "Oh, well, I didn't, but it doesn't matter because my dad will sign my paperwork because,
Just skip over that part.
yeah, but it doesn't matter. My parents will sign off on it because we're a patriotic family." And he's like, puts his pen down. He's like, "Son, it doesn't work that way anymore." But I was like, that was a story my dad would tell me that, his parents signed when he was
Hmm.
16 or 17 to join the Marine Corps early before he was 18 to allow him to do it. And I'm like, well, why can't we do it now? And he wasn't a high school graduate. So why do I have to be a high school graduate? Just let me go serve. So that was the comical story of my parents when, I had to wait until the war was over and all that other stuff before I can go and do anything. But yeah, it was by
Let's
the
wait
time I
till
got
it's
there.
really safe.
I could tell you, I came in '91 and at boot camp in July of '91. Even then, the drill instructors convinced us that we were going to war immediately after we graduated boot camp, even though it was long over. So it was just, yeah.
I think, I mean, again, with the Marine Corps, and mind for our listeners who may not know, like this was way, way before integration. So, just thinking about the mindset that they were trying to put you in, uh, you and your fellow Marines, and get you in that mindset that you're going to war, even if you weren't. Because again, they have to have you guys wired a certain way. So, and I can understand that. So that's really interesting because especially for like I said, with your mom about how she felt. We tend to hear on the show about moms wanting their child to go Air Force. For some reason it has the reputation of being the safest out there, but no issue with you being a Marine. And of course, I think the irony of the fact that your brother was on the USS Guam. So you were my
Well,
family's
my mother knew there wasn't an Air Force bone in my body, just the way,
she just knew you were
she
not
just
wired that
knew.
way.
Yeah, no, that wasn't gonna work, and she knew that. So
No, I can appreciate that. Now, okay, now you've made it over the mountain and you've gone to the recruiting station. I can just imagine that that last year of high school was pretty difficult to just you were just chomping at the bit to get out.
yeah, I spent 360 days in the delayed entry program
Oh
because
no.
they couldn't sign you a year beyond a year to a contract to go to ship the boot camp. And so there's what 365 days in a year. So I spent 360 days when I signed my paperwork in the delayed entry program playing poolie at the debt with the recruiters before I could go. So I was just itching to get out there. So yeah, it was a long
So
high
you
school
finally
year.
did 360 days later, journey over the mountain. You had to sign your
Yeah.
paperwork. So now you're in it to win it. So is the you did the yellow footprints and everything like that. And at that point, where did you end up going? Your
Well,
first
you
station
know,
out the gate.
I'll tell you that was again. I had a lot of respect, still have a lot of respect for my dad, obviously, but his best advice he gave me at the time was, you know, I had aspirations of playing college football and some other things, and he's like, hey, if you join active duty, your football dreams will probably won't come to fruition because you won't have that opportunity unless you get out after 4 years and then go to college. He's like, so, you know, why don't you just go into reserves and see how you like it? And if you really like it, you can always go active duty. It's a lot easier to go on active duty. And so I was like, he goes, that way you could play college football and be a Marine. And so I said, you know what? There's probably something to that. So I went and I joined the reserves, and you know, I get to boot camp and I go to my combat training and then go to my MOS school. And now it's time to go to everybody's getting orders, and all my Marine brothers around me are going like Okinawa and all these cool places, and I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, I gotta go back to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. I'm like, what? No. And so I tried to get out of the contract. I'm like, I want to go active duty. I don't care. Don't send me back there. I want to go. I want to stay on active duty. I love this stuff. And they just said, no, you got to go to your reserve unit, check in. You have a reserve contract, and then see if the career planner there can transition you to active duty. Well, lo and behold, I get to my reserve unit in Wyoming, Pennsylvania. Great command. I really enjoyed it there. But it was 92 now. And in 92, it was when Clinton was president. And there was a massive reduction in the military
Yes,
forces.
there
And they were
was.
reducing active duty and putting them on reserve. So a reservist contract to go on active duty, yeah, that wasn't going to happen. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I just go play college football and be a Marine, you know, whenever I could. So um, yeah, that was my first tour was as a reservist in Wyoming, Pennsylvania, and has history. Uh, the Marine Corps has a way of throwing curveballs at you, and things are pretty cool at times. My old CO, I ran into him, and we see each other every Sunday night. Sunday now at church. He ended up retiring a colonel, and he was my first reserve CO, and so I get to after all these years say hi to him every Sunday, and you know high five as we're walking out the door, and have
Wow,
those
what a
memories
small
together.
world.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So
That is so crazy. I mean, I hope you guys have some old side by side pictures from back in the day to now. That's
yeah,
pretty
the
cool.
pictures I couldn't share.
Oh my goodness.
Times
This
were
is why
different
we
back then.
pre-record this is why we pre-record these episodes. And it was
Yeah,
especially when I interview Marines.
yeah,
So no, I think I just love that piece, and I think that's fantastic. I mean that goes again why we call each other brothers and sisters compared to
right.
other occupations out there. I just think that it ends up being such a smaller world in the veteran community. So I absolutely love that. And I didn't want to jump ahead about because I know you're coaching football now, but that's kind of what I wanted to ask about you with high school too. And you ended up still playing college football. So how did that turn out? While simultaneously you're like, okay, I'm stuck. It's 92, or did you end up pursuing that? You still stayed with football,
I I did, and that's another story. I mentioned earlier that my cousin and I used to joke around about Army was better and Marine Corps was better, and that was
right?
our well, unfortunately, I was 12 years old. He passed away and when I was
Mm,
12 and he was 11. And so at that time, I was playing football and him and I played football together. And at that time of my young life, I was like, you know what, I can't play the game anymore. And I did everything that wasn't football and did other sports so that, I couldn't do it without him. And so as I got older and went into high school, I realized, you know what, I shouldn't give up my dreams just because my best friend isn't here anymore. And he'd want me to be on the football field again.
mm,
And so that was why I had that drive to go, you know what, I want to be on the football field. I love the game and I want to get back out there. I'm a, young man now. So, I could do both. I could be a Marine and play football. So I did. And I walked on at Division III, Widener University first in Chester, Pennsylvania, and then went off to Wilkes University in Wilkes-Barre, and played for 2 years there. And my mentor there was Coach Frank Sheptock, who is now the head coach at Bloomsburg University. And I reached out to him a couple months ago, and he's can't touch my son right now, but he's going to start recruiting my son when he's a junior in high school because my son is the football athlete that I never was. So, um,
wow.
but yeah, I did play ball. I was a career scout team guy, and a scout team guy means you're the backup, right? You're the backup to the backups, which was fine. I was the guy that would just go out there, play hurt, didn't matter. You know, I'd be limping around with two pulled groins, and I was going to shoot up and play because the starting offense needed a defense to play against, and I was going to do my part. So we won a championship in 1993, and to this day, that's the last time Wilkes University went 10-0, and I had the opportunity to be a part of that awesome team. A lot of veterans came out of that one too, and
Mm.
so. A lot of friends I still contact back those days, but I enjoyed it. But that burning desire to be a Marine didn't go away. And so
It's
in
important.
in '96 is when I ended up going back on active duty.
Oh, I think that's great. And I wanted to say, what was your cousin's name that you mentioned?
Scott Benza was his name.
Scott. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's, thank you for sharing that with about your cousin Scott. And I love that you still pursued football because I think that there's something sometimes when we join service, we put our dreams on the back burner and we never really know if it would have reached fruition. So I think having done that, as you said, now in 96, you're ready to go active duty, but at least you had given that a shot and played football, which you still are doing now. The kids on the field, but we'll save that for later in the show. I did want to I do want to ask about because we have unlike some veterans that I interviewed that have only served one or two contracts, we have over 30 years to go through, and I know that we could definitely spend all day on that, but I wanted to take this time to hear about some of the highlights of your career, as difficult as that might be to narrow some of that down. But if you could walk us through something that stands out in your mind from I guess your best place that you ended up stationed once you went active, and were you deployed anywhere?
Yeah. So, fast forward after coming active duty '96, I was still enlisted. Um, and then I had a burning desire to finish off my degree and become an officer. And so I kept on applying for commissioning programs and whatnot, and finally got accepted into what they called the Boost back then. They don't have it anymore.
Hmm.
Brought an opportunity for officer selection and training. Went to that school, got commissioned, and
I was out
then
of Newport, Rhode Island, right?
yeah, correct. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then went off to the University of Idaho. And I'm going chronologically so you can understand my mindset here. So bear with
Hmm.
me. But skipping through really fast. So,
No, you don't
uh,
need to. No, I know I do want to give credit where it's due because it's so incredible that you did serve that long, and I think that this is a time to really highlight what the Marine Corps did for you and your family. So please, yeah.
yeah. So I went off to University of Idaho, and being from Pennsylvania, a lot of people were like, "Well, you could have went to Penn State University, Pitt, all these big schools that had Marine Corps ROTC there, or Navy ROTC, if you will, and why did you choose Idaho?" And I'm like, "Well, I like to hunt and I like to fish, and in Idaho, I could hunt anything, and that's why I chose the school. And oh, by the way, they accept." Out of staters as in staters, and the tuition was $1,200 a semester.
Would you
And I
tell the
had
recruiters that they got to make posters? You can hunt and hunt whatever you want.
Yeah,
Join Navy or OTC.
and I'll tell you, when I checked into the unit, the first thing I had with the captain, there was a conversation. It was like, "Sir, I came here to earn my degree and earn my commission and do the Marine Corps proud." I said, "But I love to hunt, man, and my school schedule is going to be, around my hunting schedule." So I said, "I'm going to be all in. I'll get straight A's. The books will be with me in the field," and they were. And I would study for tests while I was out there hunting, but that was just my thing. And then this profound thing happened, right? And that profound thing was 9/11.
Mhm.
And we were PTing. It was a Thursday morning. I believe it was Thursday. It was Tuesday or Thursday. I don't remember the day, but I know it was the day we were PTing. And we get done from PT, and then it was the gunnery sergeant Maldonado, God bless him, just passed away this past year. He stepped outside and says, I forget the exact words, but it was something to the way of Marines, and he said Marines first because there's a bunch of Marines in the company, but there's a lot of the Navy ROTC that haven't served yet. And he's like, "Marines, for those of you who've been in for a while, the Marine Corps that you love, the one that is now about to change." And I was like, "Man, what the heck is he talking about?" And we're all at attention, like, and we're all sweating, going like, "What the heck is what?" And he's like, "Our nation is under attack." And he went on to talk about what happened. And all the Marines were like, "Oh boy, let's go." Like, this is the moment. If you think about from when I came in 91 until 2001, but like we were all trying to get on combat tours, and all you hear is, there was Somalia, and some of us were able to go. I unfortunately wasn't able to serve in Somalia, but there was very few in the Marine Corps that were young that had been to combat. And
Mm.
when we join you here, hey, if you're a Marine for 20 years, you will see combat. And so all of us are like, "Let's go. It's time to go." Like
Mhm.
we just, the heck with getting our degrees. We're just going to go. Like, "No, you're here under orders. This is what you're going to do." And so yeah, so that was a profound moment at the time, which leads to answering your question. So I apologize for taking so long, but
No,
the
it's good.
the first unit after my commission that I had the pleasure to be a part of was HMLA 269. It's a Cobra and Huey, attack helicopter squadron. So there I was, a young second lieutenant, really promoted to first lieutenant right before we deployed. And that was by far the most impactful command that I ever had the opportunity to be a part of, because of the missions that we were doing, the Marines that we were with. And you either had a choice in the what we called the skid community back then, and it was you were either on the MEU deploying or you were going to Al Assad, Iraq every
Mm.
year. And so you were in country for 8 months to 9 months, and then you're home for a couple months, and then you're back at it again a couple months later. So it was just a constant deployment. And so we were there in '05, we were there in '06, we were going back in '07. I mean, it was just constantly deploying in those environments. And so a lot of the Marines that I served with then, even though it was that long ago, it's what, 2024. So that was, back in 2005 when we deployed. So don't quick math here, 19, almost 20 years now. That was a long time ago. And they still call out of the blue, Marines that did one tour over there or two tours and then got out of the Marine Corps. They'll call and say, "Hey, sir, how you doing?" And so by far the most profound impact of my life, and my mindset of how to approach this thing we called liberty and pursuit of happiness, and what we do as human beings, not just as Marines but as human beings, to make the world a better place. So yeah, that command was the biggest impact on my life.
And you were a second lieutenant when you showed up there?
So I was a second
Sir?
lieutenant when I got there, and I was welcomed by a gunnery sergeant who now is retired master sergeant, really good friend of mine. And his words to me, "Sir, I hate lieutenants." and
That's what
and
I was going to ask about that. Yeah,
yeah,
about that because yeah, they always say find that senior NCO to stick to.
yeah, yeah. Those were his words to me. Was hey, I hate lieutenants, and so now it's like, what now, lieutenant? What do you do with that, right? And it's either you can push
Mm,
back, and or you could figure out how do I get on his team? Yeah, I'm the leader. I'm their boss, if you will. But at the end of the day, it's his team. He knows how this unit clicks. He knows how to fix aircraft. I had 10 weeks of training to be an aircraft maintenance officer. Yeah, granted, at that time I had like what 12, 13 years of being a Marine, but I was on the ground side. I had nothing to do with aviation. And so, coming into an aviation with only 10 weeks of training, I'm like, man, it's not about what I think is best. It's about, hey, let's think about this. Let's form a good team. And I
mm,
knew I needed to have him pick me. Like when you're kids and you're playing kickball in the playground, you want to be picked first. I wanted that gunnery sergeant to pick me first. And I was like, okay, how do I get there? What do I need to do to have him respect me for what I could bring to the table, and be a part of
right.
this team and not make it my team and just ruin it, right? So, and yeah, like I said, we're best friends. He calls me all the time. Great. Mark Peck is his name. Great dude. And you asked me earlier what my favorite motivational quote is. This is
Yeah,
before we started recording, and I said I can't tell you because it would be inappropriate. Well, I learned it from him, and so I still
pretty good
carry that, and
thinking.
I use it in smaller settings. So
He's cool. No, I think that's great. I hope he knows that. No, and
oh, he does.
he does, and he got picked first. And I wonder, what did you end up promoting while you were with that unit?
So I was selected to captain while I was with that unit, but we didn't promote until after I left there. And
That's
I
interesting.
I put on captain when I was went to um, Naval Postgraduate School, and that was the thing. Like a lot of people asked me, and especially at that time, we were in a nation in war. I had to make a hard decision, and that was I hated school. I didn't want to go back to school. But I was
Well,
over
especially
there
seeing
complain.
combat, that's a different
Yeah,
kind of transition to go from combat to let's go put you in a classroom again.
yeah. The reality was because I already had multiple tours under my belt. The monitors were saying, "Hey, we have to let other younger ones in there get their experience, and it's now your time to be a non-operational tour." And so you're gonna be pulled away from that because there are other jobs in the Marine Corps that aren't deploying. And
Hmm.
so but I still was like, I was trying to scheme, well, how can I still be with a unit that could potentially get deployed, right? And so that was my mindset. But at the same time, I was frustrated because here we are forward deployed, and I couldn't understand why it was so difficult to get the parts and the equipment that we needed to be successful in country when we're the best, I thought, the best economy in the world, the best supply systems in the world. Why is it so hard for the best service in the world to be so difficult to get materials to where we need to be for the warfighter to do what we got to do? And I
Mm,
remember my CO at the time, now retired Colonel Scott Jensen, great man. He's like, well, Hutch, why don't you be part of the solution? Why don't you do something to fix the problem? And I'm
mm,
like, well, gee, how can I do that from where I'm sitting? Like, what can I do? And and it was him and the major at the time, and I forget the major's name, King. No, not King. It's gonna escape me, but he was like, hey, Hutch, why don't you go to Naval Postgraduate School? And I'm like, I don't want to go to school. Like, that's not what I want to do. They're like, but if you do that in this time in your career, you're going to be put in a place to solve problems, and you're going to be getting an education to help the Marine Corps do that. And so I was like, all right, I guess I'll take it for the team and go, right? So I said, oh, I'll put it out there and see what happens. And lo and behold, they accepted me, and I ended up getting a material logistics management degree with them. And um, so I really thought I was going to be going to an aviation unit to, aviation command someplace to help, solve that burning desire. And in true fashion in the Marine Corps, they're like, yeah, no, we're going to send you to Marine Corps Logistics Command back to the ground side to help solve the logistic struggles for the ground Marines. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm an aircraft guy now. Like now I'm going back to the ground side, but hey, Marines are riflemen first, right? So that was the mindset. So I went over there to help, solve some of those retrograde problems and, getting equipment refurbished to go back into the fight again and try to help with that. So, yeah, good times. Sorry, kind of got off
No,
script there, but
don't be sorry about that. I think it's super interesting, and I I love that you brought up the Gunnies and those who mentored and it influenced you, even if there was the stuff that you can't say to Grandma Sue, as I say. Because I think that it's important. But again, we talked about that mindset about in combat, like it's not all sunshine and rainbows. So you are in a
sure.
different mindset and then going through that transition. But that's why with this show in particular, I like to highlight those transitions that you went, because you even went from the classroom and then the football field and the football field to Marine Corps, and you were an enlisted Marine, and then you went and commissioned. So you've had like a bunch of different transitions that you've gone through, and we haven't even touched on when the family dynamic came in, the family life, which when you were talking about the deployment cycles of like 9 months and then you're at home a couple months and then you're back out again. Were you married at that time? Did you have kids at that time? And when did that come in your career?
Yeah, this is one area that is tough to talk about because, we don't like to admit that, we're not perfect, right?
Mm,
Marines are always supposed to be perfect, but I wouldn't change a thing, but and I'm so happy to be where I'm at right now. And like I said, I wouldn't change anything. And so, typical Marine story, multiple wives,
mm,
divorces and struggles. The first one, I had first had kids when I was enlisted, and that marriage unfortunately didn't work out. But it was right before all the deployment started, and
mm,
there was some, I'm not going to get into all the details, but there was some concern about, is it going to be able to work if I'm going to be deploying now? And so, I
right.
had two young girls at the time who are now both in the Navy and doing well. One of them's living with me. She's a Navy reservist getting her master's degree at Millersville University over here, and so she's back with Daddy
Wonderful.
again. But yeah, so I had two kids at the time, and then when I became a lieutenant, at TBS, I met a girl there in the Virginia area, and then the deployment started, and
Mm,
we. I think we were married for 2 years. I saw her maybe 8 months out of those 2 years, and I came home to stories that she was running around on me and stuff like that. And so that didn't work out, and that was a common thing, right?
yeah.
So then I was like, I'm never getting married again. I'm done. Like there's no more. Um, and then lo and behold, I again I go out to Naval Postgraduate School. While I'm there, I have a chiropractor friend of mine that was back before the Marine Corps had chiropractors, and I had to go pay for my own stuff to keep moving. And she introduced me to one of her friends and said, I think you'll get along with her very well, who's now my current wife. And completely blessed to have, been in that situation and met her and completely changed my mind from I'm never getting married again to going, okay, well, where were you, 15 years ago, right? So,
I know.
um,
That's how it works. We're like,
yeah,
gosh, did I have
yeah.
to go through all of that just to find you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I'll never say anything bad about, my former spouses. It's more of a, it is what it is. Things just don't work out sometimes, right? And so
Right.
you grow and you learn from it and you become a better person, a better man. And I think I'm a better husband today because of those experiences, because it's not all the other persons. It's two people, right? And it takes two people a lot of hard work. And so that was one thing, unfortunately, when I was younger, I didn't like put a lot of hard work in it. I'm like, no, I'm a Marine. This is what I do. Get over it, right? So it is what it is, but like I said, I've grown and learned from it and better person today.
No, and I appreciate you sharing all that, and I love that your girls are serving now. I think that's a question I remember getting. The transition was, if I don't have children now, but they were asking like, would you let your kids serve? And I know that that's kind of the tough question when I've been talking to my other veteran brothers and sisters about. They're like, absolutely not. I don't want my child to serve. But at the same time, it was a different time then, and it's a different time now. But no, I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that, because the family dynamic is a piece that's often neglected from when we share our story of service. But it's such an important part of us, because they sit in the care packages, and then we come home, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think it's important to highlight that. And especially now, again, when you talked about the over 30 years, to say that we behind all of us good ones, right? We got a bunch of fans in the back, supporters in the back standing behind us. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is towards the second half of your career. Now, I feel like when we join, we don't think that we're going to stay in for the long haul. Considering that you were chomping at the bit to get over the mountain to join to go join the Marine Corps, did you know that you were going to be a lifer in some capacity?
Not at first. I had that burning desire to get back on active duty, but I didn't know how long that would take me. And then, I realized that's all I wanted to do, right? And then it hit me. I'm like, yeah, so okay, so now what do I do to, you know, do more for the service that does so much for me, right? And I was like, I love leading Marines. I love being in front of Marines. And so that's what drove me to keep on going. And then once I got commissioned, it was okay, well, you know, technically I have 30 more years now, right? And so how long can I go? And yeah, in my MOS, we top out at colonel. There's no
Mm.
generals in my MOS that
Oh,
ever.
interesting.
So I knew that my career would top out or at at full bird colonel. It's like, all right, well, let's go. That's my goal. Let's go get it, right? And so I always figured, shoot for perfection and expect to fall short of it, right? So
Mm.
to me, the perfect career would be I'd be a colonel someday. And when did you know I ended up being a lieutenant colonel and then retired from there. But yeah,
But you beat your dad's rank. That was the big thing,
I
right? Like that
did. I
that
did.
was all you had to do.
Yeah, I lock them up from time to time and be like, "Hey, Corporal, shut your mouth! Like, get over here." But no, it's all
There you
good.
go. That was the same with my dad too. My dad did 20 years Navy and he's like, already, you already beat your old man. So I was like, gosh, okay, now I can put my feet up. But no, it's I asked that too with regards to being a lifer because I say like why we joined isn't necessarily the same reasons why we stay in. And it's apparent that you still end up loving the Marine Corps and being around Marines, which, as we know, on the civilian side of the house, it's hard to find that. Like unless you end up going to those veteran events and meeting up with your old Marine Corps buddies, you're not going to get that same kind of personality dynamic when you're in the civilian capacity in any other office. So that could you talk me through the transition piece for you when you hit Lieutenant Colonel and you're like, this is it.
Yeah, it's not just about being around Marines. It's about making a difference for your
Mm,
Marines, right? And
I
so,
love that.
I always to me, that's a mindset that does transfer over well into the civilian community. Like I say it a lot, and maybe this is my, motivational quote now more than ever, but it's not about me. It never has been about me. It's about you and how I can make you successful. Because if you are successful, then I'm going to be successful and we'll all be successful. So
Mm,
I've always been, it's never about me. Like and if it is, there's a problem. And so yeah, I have my own wants and needs and desires, but that doesn't affect the decisions I make, if you will. It's all about the betterment of someone else. And that's what drives me. And so um, it was funny how we ended up deciding to retire. I was, coming up on, it was almost 30 years. And my son, who is now 15 at the time, he was what, 11, 12 years old. And he had moved around so many times in his young, life that he finally looked at me and he's like, Dad, we got to the Pentagon and COVID hit. And so he was locked down for a little while. And then he knew that there was a potential another move. And he was like, Dad, I'm about to start junior high, and I don't know if I want to be be changing schools when I'm in junior high and high school. Like, you
mm,
know, when he was younger, so he didn't care. I loved the Marine Corps. I loved being on the bases. I loved doing all the stuff. But as he got older, he realized, hey, yeah, maybe this isn't so cool. He got tired of trying to start all over again. And so God bless him. He went. By the time he was in seventh grade, he was already on his sixth school. Like that's how many times we had picked up and moved. And so I promised him, I said, okay, um, we'll look at retiring. and we started looking at homes right before the bubble hit, before things got really expensive. And so we started looking at areas and we put a bid in on a house. And my wife's like, "You didn't even drop your retirement papers yet." I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I guess if our offer is accepted, then that tells me I need to go and retire." And a lot of people say you don't know when it's time to retire until you know. And we put the bid in, and true story, we got an hour away from our where we currently live now. We're just heading back towards DC to our apartment down there, and I get a phone call from the realtor, and she's like, "Hey, congratulations, your offer was accepted as is." And wouldn't you know it, the person we were buying it from was a former Marine, and I used that connection to try to get a sale to work to both of our advantages, and it did. And so that Marine connection again, had
Mm.
played a profound impact on when we were retiring, where we were going to go, and set us up for success. Yeah, I had good Ted Pounds. Still talk to him. Even, it's kind of weird. A lot of people don't talk to the
And now
person you
to
bought
the
their house
previous
from,
owner.
right?
Yeah.
But he's a Marine and a retired state police officer, and he's just a great guy. And so we call each other quite a bit. And So yeah, that's how we ended up retiring. Was they accepted the offer on our house and was like, "All right, it's time to retire. Now I got to think about what am I going to do in my life now." Like I always would say, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm like, now shoot, now I'm forced to grow up. Like, what am I going to do? Uh, so and the I had to take a hard look at what does life on the other side look for Jim Hutchins and my family, and it's organizations, and I'll throw it out there, and I don't want to jump ahead, but stuff like
Go
hiring our
ahead.
heroes came up, and I was like, you know what, let me give this hiring our heroes a thought, and I started researching it, and then put in a application and asked my commanding officer at the time if it's okay if I go and do that. And God bless him, Ryan Lookabill, Navy captain, was like, "Hey, Hutch, yeah, like you served a long time. Like that's the least we could do is give you the opportunity to go and take advantage of a program like Hiring Our Heroes and see if it works out for you." And so, fortunately, I was selected by
Good.
the company that I work for now, Case New Holland, and they selected me to be a fellow with them. And shout out to that whole team that sat through that process to get me where I'm at. But it was if without that organization to help me, I probably would have struggled. To be quite honest, because I really didn't know what it was I was going to do. Like, the whole world would change. And the world that not just for me, but my sons and my daughter, that that's all they knew was daddy's a Marine. And even all my kids, that's all they knew, daddy's a Marine. Like, so I really had to think hard, like, how is that going to affect their lives now? Like, what are
Mm.
they going to think of it? Where are they going to be to put up a success? And the theme is here again, it's not about me, right? It's about everybody else. So like, if I could put them in a spot to where they can nurture and grow and be successful, then to me, that is how I'm going to define success going forward and whatever I do next. And so that's what drove some of those decisions to be where I'm at today as I transitioned out.
I think that it's a testament to your success now and happiness now that you're cognizant of that. 'Cause I can't tell you that your mindset is unfortunately not a common one for some folks. It's not necessarily that they're thinking about just me, but when it comes to transition, sometimes they are negating the fact that they're not transitioning alone, that they do have a family to consider. And like you said, thinking about your son, where he's like, "Okay, Dad, maybe now's not the time for us to keep moving when I'm entering junior high." So being aware of that, I think is just so important and such a valuable lesson for those who may be listening in that are going through their transition. And then again, reaching out for help. I mean, granted, a Marine, a senior Marine officer who'd served nearly 30 years at that time when you're thinking about transitioning, you think, I got it in the bag. Like I'm going to be getting that six figures like out the gate, right? And then I've got my degrees. And I think just your humility is something to really sink in for those who may be listening. The fact that you were willing and open to get that help and to ask your senior leadership for that support. So I think that's wonderful. And shout out to Hiring Your Heroes. If you could touch a little bit on what that organization does. Was it a matter of helping you with your resume, interviewing? What sort of support did they offer?
So what they do is they have companies that support the program, and basically it's like a almost like an internship,
Hmm.
where your last couple months on active duty, you aren't serving in uniform anymore, but you're now working for that company. You're not getting a salary from that company because I'm still active duty.
Right.
So that's the challenge, right? It's not every Marine or sailor or soldier can take advantage of these opportunities, and that's why I was completely blessed on the military side and with a company like CNH to support that program. And so I came over here in New Holland, Pennsylvania, and started working with this engineer group. They were having some struggles with keeping very talented engineers as part of their workforce because they would get burned out and with
Mm.
their work schedule and constantly in the field testing things in growing seasons or harvesting seasons all over the country. And so I was like, wow, I can relate to that. I know what it's like to be deployed and not home with your family and on the go. And so I was like, yeah, I can help out. And so, and to me, it boiled down to, trying to help again. That program is designed to help you transition, and with the intent at the end of giving you an opportunity to say no. Like
Mm.
just because you go to the fellowship doesn't mean that they have to sign you to a contract or sign you
It's true.
to a job, right? Because it's like an interview. It's like a 3 month interview, right? And so um but true to fashion, I kept on during I had a mentor within the company with HR would say, "Hey Jim, you really need to start looking at what opportunities are here for you that you may be interested in, and see if we could get you connected with some of the hiring managers and try to transition into that." And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure, absolutely. I'll get out there and take a look at it." But I got so ingrained on trying to help them solve their problem, I wasn't thinking about me, which was probably the best thing, like because that was just how I've always been. Like I'm always worried about how can I help them be better? How can I help solve their issues or solve their problems, be a part of their team? And then literally I had a week and a half on my fellowship left. And then my retirement date was coming up and there was going to be no more, paycheck from the Marine Corps than the retirement one. I was like, oh yeah, if I'm going to get a job, I better like pay attention. And and sure enough, like literally within the last week and a half, I'll give a shout out to my current boss, Tim Milosh. I had an opportunity to meet him, and he was like, "Yes, let's go." Like that was like our interview. It was kind of like, "Hey, I have this position. This is what I think you could do, and I think you'd be a perfect guy for it. We'll figure it out." And that's how it started. But I didn't know him until like a week and a half before I was done with my fellowship. So it was kind of interesting how things went. But it come full circle. Here I am last week at the company here. We had a benefits fair, and I was downstairs, and one of the gentlemen that I reported to as a fellow came up to me and says, "Hey, good to see you again. I still have your recommendations from your time in the fellowship, and I still follow them, and we implement them and implemented a lot of the things that you recommended, and it's working out very
Wow.
well." And I'm like, "How cool is that, right?"
Wow. That is so
So
cool. Goosebumps. Yeah.
yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's like it's good to know that to me it came full circle that hey, I do provide value here, right? And I can't. The gentleman's name has escaped me. I saw this quote on LinkedIn, and forgive me, I'll give a shout out later. But he said it's called positive discontent,
Hmm.
and I found out that's what I'm struggling with. Like, you do all these things with, 3 decades in the Marine Corps, all these, very high level assignments and the pinnacle of my career, finishing it up in the Pentagon, and you're making really important decisions, billions of dollars. And then you come to an organization and you're like CNH, and it's not the organization, it's me. That's the problem here. And that is you have this feeling like you're not doing enough. You're happy to be
Hmm.
here, but you're constantly looking for, well, gee, that's not what I just did. That's not a whole lot. Like compared to the things that I've done before, this is no big deal, right? And so that's the positive discontent mentality is, you're happy to be, trying to staying positive, to trying to find new ways to help out, but you're disappointed in yourself because you feel like you're not doing enough, right? So it's that
Gosh, that's so true.
it's that weird balance, right? And
Get
so
out of my head, Jim. Get out of my head.
so that's my life
It's
right
so
now.
true.
It's like I feel like I'm not contributing using my full talents to help this organization. But then I hear people like, Mark did the other day when he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I'm still using what you recommended before you were even a CNH guy." So you're like, well, wait a minute. I guess I am contributing because I was before I
Mm,
even was here. And I haven't changed me. I'm still Jim and I'm still trying to help others. And so it's just a matter of time before things start coming circling around. Because I call it this thing called packing parachutes. Like, whose parachute have you packed today? Like, you
mm.
you never meet the guy. I never jumped out of a perfect good airplane, by the way, but you never meet the people that I'm aware of that packed your parachute. And
That's
so
so
you
true.
just trust that it's done and it's done right and your life depends on it and you just know it's done. So to me, it's I'm trying to pack people's parachutes. They don't need to know that I'm helping them. They just, it doesn't have to come back to me because again, it's not about me. So if I could constantly pack somebody else's parachute and they're successful, sooner or later they'll be like, wait a minute, I didn't even realize Jim did that. And my Marines call me like, "Hey, sir, I didn't know you did that for me." Like, I'm retired now, and they'll call and be like, "Sir, I had no idea that because of something you said or did or wrote or recommended behind the scenes, I'm now in a better place. So thank you." Like, I'm like, "Oh yeah, dude, like you earned it. Like it's not me, it's you." Um,
Mm.
and so yeah, that's kind of where I'm
No,
at now, trying to figure
that's
it out.
great. Gosh, and that's why I kept saying, get out of my head, because boy, do I feel like I'm going through that. And I do want to ask and to pull on that thread of all this wisdom that you're dropping right now. I'm gonna have to like tell all my listeners to be like, definitely fast forward to this like couple minutes here is like really some knowledge right here, drop golden nuggets of wisdom. But what your advice would be to a room of transitioning service members, regardless of branch rank, what would you say to them right now?
Don't be afraid to redefine yourself. Like there's things that you probably always wanted to do and couldn't do because of your service, and or you have a passion to do a certain field, but your field in the military isn't that. Go do it. Chase after it. Don't be scared to make that adjustment. Redefine yourself. Now's the time. Like, and there are resources out there to help you. There's guys like me and ladies like have the same mindset like myself that'll assist you in that process. You just have
Mm,
to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask. And whether it's on LinkedIn, go out there and find somebody that's in that company that served in the military. It doesn't matter if they're the same branch you're not, and just reach out to them and be like, "Hey, I'm transitioning. I served. I see you're filling a role right now with this organization, and I would just like to have a non-formal informational interview with you just so I can learn what it is that you did to be successful where you're at now and what I can gain from that to help me in my transition process." Ask those questions. Do it. The more you do it, the bigger your network becomes. And it's all about establishing that network of support because yeah, we're tough Marines, we're tough soldiers, sailors, but you still be humble, ask for help.
I think that's a very valuable lesson indeed. Be humble and ask for help, and don't be afraid to chase after your dreams. And that redefining piece is something that is so true, and it continues to happen. That's why I kept highlighting the different transitions that you were going through throughout your career. I think we think that the big transition is hanging up the uniform, but we really go through multiple transitions throughout that, and we don't really notice that in the moment when we're living it. But as we look back and reflect on our careers, that's what we're doing, and especially adding in that family piece. So I'm so glad to hear about that now. And then I know that you're also mentoring you're serving as a mentor now with American Corporate Partners with ACP. And I started out as a mentee in American Corporate Partners and now a mentor. And it's great to see that you're a mentor as well. You could touch a little bit about that program. That would be great for listeners who may not know.
Yeah, you and I had the same similar path. I was a mentee with ACP around the same time I started the Hiring Our Heroes, and so great organizations that pairs you up with someone that understands what you're going through and will help you through those challenges. And again, because a lot of it is just a different train of thought, different way of thinking about things, and So that was very impactful during my transition for a year where I got to sit down once, twice a month and talk to someone who's been there, done that, and
Mm.
can help me with my journey and cheered me on, was my biggest cheerleader. You know, that even though they didn't know me my whole career, it didn't matter, right? It's somebody that wanted to pack my parachute, right? This time I got to meet him though, and so it was a great experience, and I enjoy it now. It's like, okay, that organization helped me. How can I help them? And so I have a mentee and who's transitioned from the Air Force and has some life pursuits he wants to go through, and trying to help with that process and be that resource for him in any way I can be. But I guess the message that I would have for anybody transitioning, it's still your journey. Like, you have to own where you're at in that journey. And so ask for the resources, ask for help, but you don't give up ownership. Don't rely on somebody else to do it for you. It's your
Mm.
journey. And so, the purpose of that, or these organizations, aren't to give you the roadmap. It's to help you build it. And so, um, you know, have that mindset of going, hey, I'm in the driver's seat here. I control this. I am 100% responsible for the choices I make, and it has nothing to do with anybody else. And so, if you have that mindset, use those resources to help you and guide you, you will be successful.
Thank you for that. That's great knowledge shared there. And I still feel like the other thing I'll add with the ACP is I love that you mentioned how you were a mentee while you were still going through it. So even though you had like 3 decades of experience, you were like, I can be, I'm a mentee at this point and not the mentor. But even for those who've only done one contract, you still have value added to give back, to reach back to those behind you to drop that knowledge. I think we often think that we have to reach that retirement point to drop knowledge, but we're doing it all the time, and we've lived different experiences. I have jumped out of a perfectly good airplane, but I say that there's nothing perfectly good about any aircraft we have in the military. Um, but I really love that analogy about you don't know who's packed your chute. But there's things that we've gone through. We've overcome our fears. We've overcome hard things. Uh, Gone through, pushed through sleep deprivation, deployments, not knowing if we're coming home or not, and at the end of the day. And so those things add a certain value that you can reach back to those coming behind you to share that knowledge. So thank you. And I keep hearing that humility piece and it not being about you or me. And so thank you for that. I know we're going to end up wrapping up our show here soon, but I wanted to see if you had anything else that you wanted to share with folks, not just going through transition, maybe even going through their own challenges and figuring out what they want to do, what their passion and drive is. But is there anything, any final thoughts you have?
Yeah, try to find a way to continue to serve. It'll help with that, disconnect of not serving, right? Like, find a way to. I- I'm always proud that when somebody realizes what they say, like, I didn't realize you were a Marine. Like, well, that tells me that's good, because sometimes being a Marine is bad, right? Like, if it's in a setting with people that aren't used to being around Marines, and their first response is, I didn't realize you were a Marine. To me, that's a win, right? Because
Mm,
I don't know what their expectations are, Marines, or what their thoughts are, and maybe they don't like Marines. And so, if I'm not coming across as a burly Marine, or that they think they're used to, whatever, and we're all like that, which we are. But
Except
then
on
that
the
then
football field, Jim.
yeah,
That on the football
yeah,
field, they're like, that guy is definitely a Marine.
yeah, yeah. So that's a good thing. But organizations like Travis Manion, um, as another good one out there, to be a mentor with, and still help youth, and still serve in that capacity, because some youth don't have the opportunity to have someone that's a positive influence in their life. And so, I encourage everybody to get involved in those types of things. And like you mentioned it, being a football coach, it's something special to be out there and mold young men. And I'm sorry, I know these are high school kids, but to me, if you're willing to strap on a football helmet and go and put yourself in put your hand in a pile of the wheel and do some violent things, you're a man. And even though you're in high school, you're a young man. And so I call them that all the time. Like, okay, man, this is what we're going to do today. And
Mm,
so you don't realize that, they've had people in their lives never give them that respect, right? And
Mm,
they kind of like, I'm not a man, I'm just a high school kid. But then they start realizing, man, they're going to be considered men here really quick, right? And
absolutely.
so those life lessons start sinking in and they start really connecting the dots. And you hold them to a higher standard and be like, okay, our football team is going to be recognized as the best young men in this school. Like everybody's going to go and look at it and go, wow, that's a football player. I said, not because of your talent on the field, but because of how you carry yourself professionally as a student. Because you're
Mm,
athletes or you're students first before you're an athlete. And so had that positive influence and set those tones and all those life lessons that I learned as a young Marine, are very transferable to someone who will never be a Marine, right? And that is, you know, go, set a high standard for you, set a high standard for your team, and work hard to achieve it and be a part of a team. There's no I in team, right? You probably heard that 1,000 times,
yeah.
but be a part of the team and do your part. And so a lot of fun. Plus, kind of get to be around my son, right? And being sharing the football with him is the football field with him is real special. And so it's just really cool to be out there. I keep my distance and I try to let him know, yeah, I'm your dad, but you have a head coach and you have a position coach and you go to them first when we're on the football field, not to me. And so
Mm.
I coach a different part of the team on purpose by design to separate myself. But it's always cool when I see him do a good play to be able to walk up to him, give him a hug, be like, "Hey, good job, dude!" Right, and just walk away
Yeah,
and let
that's
him be, let
amazing.
him let him be his own young man, right, and grow up, right.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. So
I love that. And thank you for giving a shout out to your kids, and your wife. I just think that that's fabulous. That obviously, it's a testament to your happiness now in life, post retirement. And congratulations on that, because I know you're only just a few years out post retirement. But it's wonderful to see you doing so well, and your happiness there.
I
And
I,
thank
I
you for
gotta.
joining us. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I
I
gotta
don't
give
know.
a shout out to my youngest daughter, Courtney. Man, she's my baby, right? And so, I don't obviously have all the life experiences like my two older daughters and with Steven being a couple years older than her. But man, she really, really makes me realize that, hey, I have to set that example for her and things that I didn't do so well with my older daughters and show her, hey, what does a good man look like? And
Mm.
so she's such a adorable young girl and so so proud that what she has become. I'm proud of all my kids and what their own individual contributions to what they bring to this world, and they're all just phenomenal. But I got to give a shout out to my youngest. She's something else. She's a good little girl, daddy's girl, and she always will be. So
Oh, I love that. Oh gosh, that's the powerful song that my dad always shared was "Turn Around," and that song "Turn Around" is really to what you're saying. It's like sooner or later they just end up growing up before you know it. So, thank you again for giving a shout out to your family, for sharing your family with us, and your nuggets of wisdom. I know it's gonna be real hard pressed for our team to figure out which golden nuggets we're going to highlight from this episode, but it's we're more to do like numerous highlights, and you're always welcome back on Veteran Voices. And for our guests, if for you have anybody that you would like to come on the show, Veteran Voices is all about interviewing those who are serving beyond the uniform. As you said, the service doesn't end when we hang up the uniform, and it's a great way for us to feel connected to our community and make the world a better place. So, again, to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Veteran Voices. It's so great to have Jim on the show. And Jim, I'd like to see if you could shout out how folks can get a hold of you via LinkedIn, email, smoke signals. What's the best way if folks want to reach out and hear more?
so I would always say 1-800 call Hutch, but that if you dial
There
that
you go.
number, it's not going to work, right? So the best way to get a hold of me, go out there on LinkedIn, James Hutchins. I think a clean shaven picture of me is out there, but also I'm more than happy to share my email. Please shoot me an email to james.hutch1014 at gmail. Give me a shout there. And
Great.
I would entertain a call anytime, all day, every day. I'm still a 24/7 guy mentality. So I kind of live for those moments still. And thankfully my wife puts up with that. So she's a true trooper to stand behind me, knowing that I really truly haven't taken off the uniform and kind of do those things. But I guess that's what makes us a good team. So
I love that. And I think it's at this point the uniform is very much your daily suit. So you said like your hero uniform. But the hero's journey, again, I'm gonna do this Lord of the Ring analogy, but your hero's journey is still continuing on. And thank you again, Jim, for joining us on Veteran Voices. And to our listeners, we hope to see you here again next time. Again, Veteran Voices is part of the Supply Chain Now family of programming where you can get our show wherever you get your podcasts from. And we are a proud partnership with the Guam Human Rights Initiative. And you can learn more about that organization at guamhri.org. So, again, as we always say on Veteran Voices, do good, pay it forward, and be the change that's needed. We will see you all again next time. Take care.